Welcome, everybody. It's so fun to be here with you all. I think it's 5 o'clock straight up. I can hear the bells chiming that it's 5 o'clock. So we can do a little chatting, but I'm going to give you a little bit of an update and then we'll get started, and maybe most people will have joined by then. But I'm Susan Askew, and I'm class of '86, and I'm the Associate Vice President for Alumni and Parent Programs. And it's just, we've really missed being with you all in person on campus and in Sewanee Club events across the country. So we're just really excited to try to be together this way. And you're in for a real treat tonight because we have a very special guest. But before we get started, I wanted to just give you a quick update from things on campus and what's going on in Sewanee. And as you know, our students have gone to remote learning, and we made that decision when they were gone for spring break. And so the students, the campus has just been so quiet because the students have been gone since mid-March, and they're trying to adjust to a new way of learning. And our faculty are doing a fantastic job helping them finish out their coursework with creative ways to teach outside the classroom in this new way. And you guys know as much as anybody, but the spring weeks at Sewanee leading up to commencement are just fantastic. And it's just been a different spring, and I just feel so sad for these students because they have, you know, had virtual comps, and there's been no spring party weekend, and we have postponed commencement. So, but we are just so committed, seniors especially, to give them a commencement celebration that they deserve at a time when we can do it safely. Our staff is working mostly remotely, and we've all become really good experts on Zoom, as you can imagine. And our Sewanee businesses in downtown Sewanee are struggling a little bit because most of them are not considered essential, and so they're unable to be open and to do any business. So they're being creative too, trying to do some selling products online. But our downtown restaurants have risen to the occasion, and they are doing curbside delivery and pickup, and offering different kinds of ways to serve the community. There is some good news. Our admissions office has been doing a remarkable job, and our incoming freshman class for this fall is just fantastic. And it's about 80 people larger at this time than our freshman class last year. And so we're going to need every bit of them. And I just want to thank you all for what you've done to spread the word about Sewanee to students who are looking for a great place to be. So thank you for that. We've moved Tiger Tuesday to May 19th, and so you'll be hearing from the Sewanee Fund pretty soon about those details. And again, thank you ahead of time for what you'll do for Tiger Tuesday, and supporting all the programs here at Sewanee. It's just a crazy time, and there are many faculty members who are retiring, and we will be reaching out to you to help us acknowledge them. We're going to prepare little commendation books for them with letters from you all. So thank you for helping with that. And as you know, it's also John McCardle's last few months as Vice Chancellor, and it's, I'm sure, not the way he pictured it, but he has just been an amazing leader through this time for us. So we're hopeful here, and we are looking forward to when we can be together again. But for tonight, we're just super excited to be together this way. And so now I want to introduce our guest that I know you all will enjoy immensely. But John Shackelford, he is he has been the men's tennis coach, and he arrived in Sewanee 34 years ago. And then a couple years ago, he has become the director of tennis, which means he's overseeing recruitment and fundraising and athletic development for both the men's and women's team. And he, you know, he's so much more than a tennis coach. He served as the special assistant to the vice chancellor as a chairman of the Cornerstone Initiative. And he worked with a lot of students in that way, providing new ways for them to engage on campus. He is the most successful men's coach in the history of Sewanee athletics. And I'm just going to read you this, although there's so much more I could read, but his teams had advanced to the NCAA Division III tournament 16 times. He has won 12 conference championships and has also been listed in the ITA top 10 on 4 occasions. He's coached 17 All-Americans and 96 All-Conference players. It's just amazing. And when I say he's the winningest men's coach at Sewanee, I mean, that's a true statement, but there is a winningest coach overall, and he's only second to his wife, Conchie Shackelford, who's the women's coach. He's been recognized himself in addition to the teams. He's been coach of the year several times. He's been on some national committees for tennis, and he created this tennis camp for juniors at Sewanee. He also has an adult tennis camp, but he's just been so good for Sewanee. And he arrived for the '86 tennis season, and I was a senior here, and so I've known him for a very long time, and so I know what I'm saying when I say that he's just a very special, special man. And the fact that he has been at Sewanee and so many students have gotten to learn from him and benefit from his insight is just so fortunate for Sewanee. And I feel like there's no introduction that would do him justice, and I think that I should just let him speak for himself, because I know that by hearing him tonight, you're going to say, oh my gosh, Suze was right. So I just want to thank John Shackelford for being here and helping us kick off this virtual Sewanee Club program. So I'm going to turn it over to John.
Well, thank you, Susan. And through that long introduction, I think what's one of the most important things is that Susan said she was a senior here when I first arrived. And what that lets you know is that I know a lot about Susan. And so she usually oversells my ability quite a bit on these introductions. And I'll do my best to temper those expectations here in the next 20 or 30 minutes. And before we begin, I do want to reflect on something that Susan said there, that I think we ought to just take a moment and pause and think about our current students. What this talk is about tonight are some of the great moments that students have had that I'm a witness to. And I don't think you would have joined us tonight if you didn't have those same fond memories of this campus and this mountain. And so for our students right now, our current set of students, and in particular our seniors who are being robbed of those moments, I think it's important that we just consider that for a moment. I hate the fact that our senior students will not be here on May the 10th to receive their diplomas and be with their friends and family. And I'm just hopeful and thankful that they can all return to the mountains soon and we'll have a chance to visit with them. One of the things that I will talk about tonight in talking about those great moments is some of my students who have been named All-Americans. For those of you who aren't tennis players, that's an incredibly hard thing to do. You got to finish in the final 16 singles players, the top 8 doubles teams in the whole country. And this year, the NCAA tournament has been canceled, so our student athletes don't have an opportunity to do that. With the exception of the NCAA has decided that they will award the All-Americans this year to the final rankings. And today, the ITA finished up its annual rankings, and on our women's side, junior Catherine Owen and senior Ellie Zura finished 9th in the country. And as a result, they're going to be named onto the All-America team later this year. And I couldn't be happier for those two. So congratulations to them as we begin tonight. A big thank you to all of you who have logged in tonight to listen to this. For those of you who don't know me very well, by way of introduction, I'll offer a story that hopefully illustrates what it is I do and who the students are that I'm fortunate enough to work with. This particular story began in late January of 2014. A young freshman boy came to my house on a Friday evening, the night before Shake Day. His mission that night was to tell me he wasn't interested in joining a fraternity at that time. He wanted to focus on his academics, and more particularly in the part that involved my role, he wanted to be an All-American tennis player in that very first year. That's a very difficult thing to achieve. Looking him up and down, one could not know the competitive fury that lay deep inside. There was not a visible muscle under his freckled skin. He was of an average height, striking red hair, and he did not create the perception that he was to be feared. The source of his massive forehand power was seemingly invisible. Yet we agreed to come to work early and stay late to ensure that he had every opportunity that year. To shorten this tale, he did play #1 that year. He was very successful. He qualified for the NCAA championships in California that May. We flew out with 3 student athletes. Our #1 and 2 young women had both qualified in singles and doubles. To add to this young man's pressure, both Bronte Goodhue and Lindsay Lyles won their first round matches early in that first day of the tournament in order to make the final 16 and to make their All-American team. So it was left to Avery Schober to win his match to meet this year-long personal goal. The difference in coaching in an individual tournament like that one and in a regular season match is that you can devote all of your energy to one person instead of trying to conduct a 6-ring circus. So I sat by Avery's court and I focused on keeping him calm, motivated, and offering the best strategy that my 30 years of experience could provide. Despite my best efforts, Avery lost the first set badly. He was an unseasoned freshman and understandably nervous. His opponent was tall, powerful, and experienced. I looked up into the stands at my wife, Conchi, and to my assistant coach, Curry Martin, hoping for some clue as to how to do a better job. And then it dawned on me. Avery was only there because of that inner fierceness I described earlier. All of my efforts at keeping him calm were actually backfiring. The humbling truth was he didn't need me. He only had to discover something he already had. I needed to let Avery be Avery. So I left. I went up into the stands like a fan. Avery hated to lose so much that he became himself again. He didn't need me to stand in his way. 2 sets later, he was a winner and an All-American, a feat that he would achieve twice more before he graduated. I give you that long preamble as a warning. As Cameron Tyre has often reminded me, my advice is often better left unheard. You may have more luck returning to Netflix this evening and the wisdom of Tiger King before I finish. With that as my introduction, I'd like to share with you tonight a few thoughts on what Sewanee does mean to me and to those in our gigantic Sewanee family. There is a moment, one that all of us who live and work in Sewanee are familiar with. If you were a student here, you likely missed it. It happens the morning after graduation. Sometimes you will find it as early as 3 o'clock in the afternoon on commencement day. Sewanee suddenly becomes a ghost town. Student cars are packed and headed home or to the beach, or the first stop on a career train. Dads have loaded up the U-Hauls or packed the back of SUVs so tightly, you wonder where all that stuff came from, and did you really need it? Suddenly we have Sewanee to ourselves. A walk down University Avenue means that sidewalks are unnecessary. A passing car might not come this way for an hour. The sound of the birds is suddenly much clearer, and the color of the azaleas has no competition. There is a peace, knowing that the Deans will not get a call around 1 a.m., or that Tony cannot find a car to ticket, or parking in a space without lines. The immediate sensation is to think this is a call for celebration. The quiet is intoxicating. We have made it once more. The finish line was unimpeded, and our graduates came through as champions. We came, we taught, they conquered. Yet it only takes the momentary span of a single day to find the emptiness of missing what once was the normal pace of our days. Classrooms filled with those eager, and those whose reading remains still undone. Tennis courts, baseball, lacrosse fields, busy with athletes full of youthful energy that bring alive the spirit of this campus. Gary Auditorium full of song, or the blaring of a French horn, clearly in need of many more hours of practice. You see, like all things, Sewanee is a place where the work becomes work. Teaching and coaching and discipline and care, all the things that become a job. On that hour of peace, when we take a breath, suddenly we have clocked out, poured a celebratory beverage, and fool ourselves by thinking that the job is done. But then the quiet fades into an absence. We miss you, your passion, your conviction, your friendship. Each of us quickly comes to discover that Sewanee is not made from these seemingly ageless blocks of sandstone. No, Sewanee is the students. One with a gown draped over his shoulder who walks the path from the dining hall to the library and says hello as you pass. Sewanee is the group of young women laughing on their way back to a shared home in Johnson or Hunter. It's the three boys in mismatched NBA jerseys throwing a football in front of Sigma Nu, or those listening to what someone defies as music in front of Phi. We discover that Sewanee is not a job. It's life, it's family, it's home. We've lived in this would-be ghost town for nearly 2 months now. Only a handful of students remain, nestled down inside deserted dorms. Families cooking dinner instead of gathering at Shenanigans or Mountain Goat. Faculty getting used to the new normal of seeing students sitting in a row of boxes on their screen instead of the creaky wooden chairs inside Walsh Ellett. Springtime is no less beautiful this year. Dogwoods, redbuds, wildflowers are making their annual visit. The birds are flying home. Geese honk as they pass overhead, and the owls that never left gossip in the night air. But that body of life is visible in its vacancy. I've been here almost 35 years, and I don't know what to do with this absence of youthful vitality that makes our days so rewarding. Like many of you, I consider myself an amateur carpenter or unskilled landscaper. Lowe's has my credit card on file and is clearly listed as an essential business to keep ourselves occupied in the backyard. I built a friend a deck this month, painted my trim, planted some bushes, and for the 34th time attempted to grow grass in a yard where Brand Potter's geology students could tell me that the mountain's rock lies inches beneath those roots. And thus, those fledgling seeds will soon lose the battle. My yard will be green, only because the carpet of moss allows it to be. Some may believe that coaching is like carpentry. We build, we shape, carving usefulness out of planks of pine born somewhere in the Carolinas, or tied together with nails forged in Birmingham. But I have found that coaching, teaching, this university life is not about formation, not about my vision of what will be. Instead, I found it to be akin to my efforts in the garden. We plant ideas, offer what inspiration can serve as sunshine, and hope that the rain finds our much-loved targets. This human metamorphosis has its own path, a transformation powered by your personal DNA. What you have all become, who you all are, is not the creation seen in the vision of an earthly architect. Somehow, despite spending too much time with a Frisbee in the KA lawn or a red Solo cup in hand in front of TKP, while a football game is played over your shoulder. Your stem took flight upward. Your branches were formed of loved ones you never imagined would exist during that formative time you shared with us on this mountain. You have grown a life with roots born in this soil from our shared plateau. I came to Sewanee when I was 24 years old, certain that I would teach tennis players to win championships, build their strength into an unstoppable force, and help them control the demons hiding between their ears, so often at war with themselves. Those trophies have been collected, but in truth, they simply gather dust as we seek the next one. The weight room was useful not for where it took us, but for the time we shared inside that dungeon that only smelled of sweat, with rhythmic music from cymbals of iron. Our practices in the sun and the wind and indoors in January were all designed to help us reach our destination. But what we didn't know was that the journey we were all on together was the place we were intended to be. Over these past several years, this eclectic existence of university life has taken me to the corners of an imagination beyond my own. I officiated a marriage out of the cross for a couple for my adult tennis camp, shared my impressions of married life at the wedding of two seemingly perfect Sewanee grads, was invited by a good friend and alum to meet Roger Federer in person, had the privilege of welcoming back my '93 team as they were inducted into the Sewanee Athletics Hall of Fame, and just a few months ago, sat by a bedside and held the hand of my 93-year-old best friend as he made his way beyond this life and into the next. As we parted ways that night, I asked Bob Short what advice he would leave for all of us. He quoted Marcus Aurelius that is inscribed on one of his last paintings. "Live a good life" was the last thing he said to me, and a perfect bit of advice for us all. 2 months later in January, as I offered his eulogy, I looked down at the young faces of his 3 great-grandchildren, and I realized that I was not telling Bob's story, or rather reading the prologue of the narrative those 3 children would soon write for themselves. I've sat in offices trying to help bring some version of justice to the unfortunate situation students find themselves in, and realize that the only real salve to our pain is time, friendship, forgiveness, and the unknown strength that lies within. For me, the common denominator in all those experiences is found in the communal bonds we form with those we care most about. The declaration of eternal love, our acceptance of the inevitability of time's unforgiving movement, and the difficulty we face in examining the flaws in our own humanity, are the daily chores of creating a community that is alive and growing. I was wrong about what coaching would be. I wasn't hired to teach college kids how to hit a winning forehand. Those of us who live and work on this mountain found this life, not because we wanted a job, because sharing it with you is an existence with a value beyond the limits of our youthful vision. During these talks, I generally try to tell a few funny stories about the missteps my players had as students. I'm sure that each of you did things in those days you may prefer to forget today. All of my alums on this call are currently cringing with what may now follow, including you, Susan. One of our great student athletes, a faultless Southern lady from Montgomery, Alabama, is Fairleigh Scott Heron. Fairleigh's father, Jim, was class of '58. She and her husband, Mark, both graduated in '92. Their amazing daughter, Ellie, will graduate here next month. Fairleigh, out of the deepest respect, I have never told a story about you. But as you well know, there is a first time for everything. Instead, I'll share a moment from our California spring break trip of 2002. Conchi stayed home that week with a newborn Tessa to go along with our other 3 children. We started the trip in San Diego, and as good fortune would have it, Sewanee was in the middle of negotiating a food service contract with Marriott. We ended up with a spectacular twin high-rise towering above the Pacific in San Diego. After checking into our luxury accommodations, I reminded the teams of our no alcohol policy and recommended they go straight to bed as we had practice first thing the following morning. With 3 young children safe in the hands of their mom back in Tennessee, I decided it would be a great night to explore the historical Lamplight District. As I walked, I observed the open-air restaurants, plenty of live music on a beautiful, warm California evening. I began to regret my admonition that everyone remain safely in their room. Little did I know that Peter Barr, who was the captain and the ringleader of the men's team, decided that the boys should find a nice place to congregate. I don't think Coach would mind if we shared 1 bottle of wine over dinner, was his comment that began the festivities. As you might expect, 1 bottle led to 2. And as my investigation later uncovered, tequila became the natural progression. With youthful minds making less than informed decisions, 2 of the nameless young men, we shall call them Jason and Ryan, ended up in Tijuana, Mexico. An attractive young woman, native to the region, offered her professional service as hostess for their international visit. This sounded like a great bargain for 2 young men in search of a study abroad experience. Later that evening, or sometime the following morning, they discovered that they were without wallets, no ID, no money, no credit cards, only a vanished hostess, and certainly not sleeping in the comforts of the San Diego Marriott, safely across the US border. Meanwhile, I was proudly waiting on the roof of our high-rise, where they had 6 tennis courts and had catered an incredible buffet breakfast for our team. Our women were all appreciative of this once-in-a-lifetime setting and ready to play tennis. Our men's team was more than a little late to practice and thus participated for the remainder of the morning in some educational exercises of my choosing. My wife, Conchi, has coached our women's team as we worked side by side these many years. On her first year on the job, she was tasked with helping 4 young freshmen grow up and the impossible chore of helping their fellow first year, Laura Middleton, now Adams, slow down. One of those girls had lived a sheltered existence before her arrival at this annual carnival. We had watched her play a point once where she continued to play balls that her opponent hit beyond the baseline. When asked what she was doing, her reply reflected her sweetness and perhaps her naivete. I'm having so much fun playing. I don't want it to be over. We clearly had to toughen this girl up, on and off the court. Conchi decided one day to take this young girl aside and offer her some expert life coaching advice. She told this young woman that she was now in college. It was permissible and perhaps acceptable for her to shave her legs above her knees. As strange as that personal level of coaching may seem, that whole group of Hall of Fame women known as the BFTEs that played together in the late 1980s and early 90s are still close friends, and they still text daily. So I sat in amazement last week as my wife was offering this same, now 30 years older woman, advice on how to color the gray in her presently middle-aged hair. Coaching tennis at Sewanee, we offer full-service grooming tips throughout the cycle of life, from teenage legs to midlife hair issues. As the parents of 4 incredible daughters, Conchi and I have sent our children off to college in Richmond, Virginia, Middlebury, Vermont, and just down the road to Chattanooga. This fall, we will be able to call ourselves Sewanee parents for the first time, as our youngest daughter, Tessa, enrolls as a freshman at Sewanee. When our older girls graduated, did these other esteemed colleges find them careers? No, it simply took a few calls to Sewanee alums. Particularly thank you to Wyatt Harper and Laura Fanjoy. And they were off on their next path. We advertise that service in every admissions brochure, but it is more than a marketing tagline. This loyal and generous human network is real. Just as surely as Abraham begat Isaac, and so on and so on, countless scores of you have found careers and connections through the Sewanee tree, and then shared that same privilege with the generation that followed. We talk about Sewanee being a family. I know this to be a living and generational truth. If you have ever attended a Sewanee wedding, a Sewanee Club event like this, or celebrated a life at the funeral of one of our own, the familiar faces are always a mirrored reflection from your time here on this mountain. This idea of community that we preach is no myth. When you live together through shared experiences, a volunteer trip to Jamaica, a lab group working together, serving as a volunteer fireman or EMT, or part of a team with a championship goal, the bonds born on those journeys live far beyond our gates. I told you earlier I was given the opportunity to share some thoughts at the wedding of two Sewanee grads. I described them as perfect. I say that because Jenny Lyles, who played for our women's team, was a two-time All-American tennis player, who was also the 2013 valedictorian. She was chosen as Woman of the Year by our conference. Who did she marry? The SA Man of the Year, Philip Link. He was an All-American swimmer and an equally impressive student. Both are now med school graduates in addition to their Sewanee degrees. Their marriage took place just before Christmas in 2018. All Saints was alive with its annual glory, while filled with brilliant red poinsettias. As the bride made her way down the aisle, you can imagine the perfection of the moment. If you were married here, you know the dramatic instant of those chapel doors opening, and the bride appears as spectacularly as Princess Diana claiming her stage. I had planned to talk that day about how life and marriage weren't perfect, about how they were not really in control of this destiny. What was to come might not be something you could study for or endlessly practice until perfection arrived. As her father answered the question of who gives this woman, he turned to take his place in the pew beside her mother. His feet were much less nimble than those years when he was a college tennis player himself. And they found a home tangled inside her long veil. It was as if we were all watching in slow motion, this carefully coiffed hairpiece being ripped down from its well-placed home, curls cascading down, perfection becoming reality. Her sister Lindsay, who was standing close as the maid of honor, was also an All-American athlete, a brilliant Benedict scholar who had graduated at the top of her class as well. But to her, perfection took its shape like the spirit of a wild horse in the canyons of the West. For her, hair was something of a bother, not an art form. Yet it was left to her to repair the damage. In her rushed ineptness, the veil was then assembled backwards. Chaplain Tom McPhee then got involved and veered far out of his lane, attempting to serve as hairstylist. Another failed mission. Finally, one of the bridesmaids came to the rescue, but for 2 minutes, chaos reigned on Camelot. My homily needed no introduction. Life had given me proof. Although most of us can laugh now, the bride may still need a few more centuries to forgive the fate of her small misfortune. Life mirrors itself as we dance between reality and analogy. We find ourselves with a lonely and thus imperfect campus, eager for the return of our masses, streets that ache for traffic, and spring flowers that need a witness as they provide a breathtaking foreground to the beige stone. Yet victory has only been stalled temporarily, as the imperfection of a virus finds its home tangled in our veil. We wonder when life will find its pace again and the classrooms and fields will fill with activity once more. Experience has taught me one thing: our journey will resume. My time in Sewanee with you has taught me much more. I know that we are all connected in big ways and small, a part of something much bigger than ourselves, and share the struggle of common experience. Each one of us must face our fears head on, no matter what court, field, theater, stage, or laboratory we find ourselves in, and attack the moment at hand. This place we call home is much more than a college campus. It's a shared experience full of love, conviction, passion, pain, and wonder. This idea of community is indeed palpable. It's the setting where those indefinable moments that help us discover who we really are burst forth from the shadows of tomorrow and reveal the truth we were always searching for in an education. Soon those same challenges will once again be in the hands of this generation walking in your footsteps. They too will find their riddle, search for and find connection, and will know that we are here, all of us, Sewanee. And in the end, we will discover we weren't playing for that trophy at the finish line. We were playing simply to live in that moment when we reach those crossroads that challenge us and allow us to unearth what was previously unseen. This has never really been a job for me or for my fellow staff members and our esteemed faculty. Instead, it's a way of life. We together have always been and will always be a family. Thank you for giving me a moment of your time tonight. I hope to see you all here on the mountain once again very soon. Thank you, Susan.
Oh, Coach, thank you so much. That just is putting everybody in the good Sewanee feeling way right now. So thank you for that. I'm kind of trying to see, I wanted to share with everybody at the peak, we had 95 people viewing on the Zoom. And then I've also live streamed this on Facebook. And so we've got a handful over there, but we do have a chat room kind of open, and there's a few comments. One about your nice jacket from Pratt Lewis. I don't know if they're taking me down a path, but Scott Gallimore is saying, Shaq, can you please tell the Sean Laughlin Hendricks retirement story? But then he signs it as Eric Roddy, and that's why I think maybe, do you know what they're talking about?
Well, real quickly, what I would say is that Sean Laughlin was one of my favorite players of all time, an incredible young man with a great personality, an amazing amount of talent. And his senior year, he chose not to play tennis because our team was already loaded with so much other talent. But because we had so many players taking exams and not wanting to miss that first day of the conference tournament, we brought Sean out of retirement. We put him out there on the court in the first round playing doubles with Eric Roddy. And as usual, Sean was brilliant and led our team to a first round victory. So it proves that once you're a Tiger, you're always a Tiger.
Great. Also, Andres Caro is just saying, how are you doing, Coach? Give him an update. Are you baking enough cakes?
Well, I tell you, Andres, what I am doing is I am missing you, and I am missing our team very, very much. As you well know, Andres, tonight was the night we were scheduled to leave for our conference championships, where our team hoped to win its 8th championship in a row for both men and women. And knowing you would have led us to that victory. So, Andreas, I'm missing you very much.
Great. Oh gosh, here come a lot. Let's see. Derry says, not a bad talk for Sewanee's #2 coach.
We'll let Conchi do it next time, Derek.
Oh, good. People are just sending their love to you, but and I'm not a bit surprised. But just thank you guys so much. We are going to try this again. We have one scheduled for May 7th. It's going to be the story of the 1899 football team, and alum Norman Jetmanson and David Cruz from the class of 76 and I think 72 for David. Will share, give us a great insight to that team. They're working on a documentary, and I think you'll find it very interesting. So we'll try this again in 2 weeks, but it's been great being with you all, and thanks again so much, Coach, for being here.
Enjoyed it. Thanks for coming.